questions.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Shade, so you describe yourself as a son of wealth and privilege. I think you describe yourself as a legacy student. Does that mean your parents or your grandparents went to Brown?
Yeah, my father went to Brown.
But other than having some complaints like the beef mushroom blend, you're really speaking not so much for yourself, but for other kids. You say the kids who are not born on third base. Is that right?
Absolutely. I think the value of an Ivy League degree used to mean that you were smart, that you're brilliant, but I think it's being diminished.
And as you know, the vast majority of young people who want to go to college are not going to be able to go to Brown, even if you increase the class size as you've advocated by a couple hundred kids. The vast majority are going to end up going to, if they can afford it, state universities, community colleges, and so on. So my question for you is, will you use your platform here today to oppose the major cuts in Pell grants, which have allowed an avenue for upward mobility and education for young people that are built into the current tax bill? 1.4 million Americans would be thrown off, and I just wonder if you would oppose the cuts to Pell grants, the cuts to student loans, and the 80% cuts to college work study, which you know allows people to work their way through college.
Well, I think something that we've observed economically is that...
No, I'm going to, like my friend, I'm going to ask you to answer the question. Do you oppose all those cuts, or do you support them?
I guess I believe that that subsidizing education only increases the cost because...
So you favor those cuts. So you would just get rid of the Pell Grant program, is that right?
I'm not an expert on the Pell Grant program, but I know that generally...
You seem to be an expert. So you don't favor federal student aid to kids who want to go to college for Pell Grants or college work study. You're opposed to that?
I think that when students don't pay the cost of going to college, then we've seen prices rise.
Made yourself clear, and thank you for coming in for your testimony. Look, a point was made before that collusion is per se illegal, which of course is true as a matter of antitrust law. But per se collusion is only illegal if there is actually per se collusion. Now, this reminds me of a hearing that we did over in the Oversight Committee with Chairman Comer about impeachment, where the Republicans lined up all these witnesses about impeachment of Joe Biden, and then all of them said that they didn't see evidence, they were not aware of evidence that would justify impeachment. And so the two expert witnesses here, Dr. Cooper and Mr. Martin, as I'm reading your testimony, are saying that they don't have evidence of price fixing. Mr. Martin says, I think you just stated it, I'm making no judgment about any current conduct. You're not making a statement on it. Dr. Cooper, you said my testimony does not take a position on whether Ivy Leagues are coordinating their pricing decisions or whether they're in violation of federal antitrust law. So again, this is much ado about nothing. This is an attempt just to create kind of a propaganda smokescreen to attack the Ivy League schools, and your expert witnesses are saying that they don't have evidence that there are antitrust violations going on. And of course, they're correct, because if there were, the Trump Department of Justice would actually be engaged in prosecution or an investigation of them. So we have one champion of the working class at Brown University who is opposed to Pell Grants and other means for kids to actually go to college in America, where most kids do go to college, and two expert witnesses who don't see price fixing taking place by the Ivy League institutions. But there is a real problem in America. Only 10% of college students go to for-profit colleges, but they're responsible for 50% of all student loan defaults. And I'm going to ask for unanimous consent to enter a campaign statement by Marco Rubio entitled, "Trump University is an absolute scam. Get the facts about pending litigation," if we could, Mr. Chairman. But Dr. Morgan, let me go to you. How does the Republican attack on regulatory protections against for-profit colleges and universities affect the fraud against students taking place and the education market generally, because they are dismantling the regulations that were put in place to protect students against for-profit university fraud?
Yeah, we're seeing action both here in Congress and at the Department of Education that are dismantling or laying the groundwork to dismantle all of the protections that have been put in place for for-profit schools. And what we've seen cyclically over time is when those rules are pulled back, we have increased enrollment in for-profit colleges, we have increased debt that people can't pay off, and we have increased allegations of fraud.
Okay, and what about their move to abolish the Department of Education and to gut the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau? Will that exacerbate the difficulties that young people are having paying for college?
We're taking the cops off the beat who can actually identify that fraud and stop it and put money back into people's pockets.
Gentleman's time has expired. I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record the following article from Ivy Coach titled Ivy League Tuition and Fees for 2024-25, comparing tuition rates amongst the 8 Ivy League schools, and also an article from Ivy Coach titled Ivy League Admission Statistics, comparing the acceptance rates amongst the 8 Ivy League schools. I now recognize the gentleman from Virginia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate